As we pulled up to the address, the last sliver of sunlight dipped below the horizon, leaving us in the dim glow of the car's headlights. The house before us loomed like a relic from a bygone era, its windows dark and shuttered, the paint peeling like aged skin. It was nothing like the charming pictures we had seen online, and a cold shiver of doubt ran down my spine. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly as she squinted at the faded house number beside the door. "It has to be," I replied, though my confidence wavered as much as hers. The idea of spending our weekend here, in what looked like the setting of a horror film, was far from the cozy getaway we'd imagined. "Let's just check it out," Tom suggested, his hand already on the car door. "Maybe it's just the outside that's bad. It could be nice inside." Reluctantly, we agreed, curiosity edging out our initial fear. After all, it could simply be a mix-up with the address, we reasoned. With a collective breath to steady our nerves, we stepped out of the car and approached the shadowed front porch, unaware of what awaited us inside. The door creaked ominously as we pushed it open, stepping into the musty air that smelled of old wood and forgotten stories. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, a wave of familiarity washed over me. The staircase, the moldings on the ceiling, the faded wallpaper, I knew them all. This wasn't just any house, it was my childhood home, the one we'd lost years ago to foreclosure. "Guys, I used to live here," I stammered, my voice echoing slightly in the hollow space. "What? Are you serious?" Emily's voice was a mix of surprise and concern as she glanced around, her flashlight beam dancing across the walls. The place was a mess, covered in dust and cobwebs, chairs upturned and old family portraits hanging askew. Each step deeper into the house stirred a memory, every corner a ghost of the past. We moved cautiously, the floorboards groaning under our weight as if protesting our intrusion. As we explored, we stumbled upon signs of recent habitation, a phone charger plugged into a cracked wall socket, a newspaper dated just last week, and in the kitchen, a plate with a half-eaten meal rotting away. Someone had been here, using this abandoned house for some unknown purpose. In the back of what used to be my old bedroom, I noticed something odd about the bookshelf. It didn't fit with my recollections. Curious, I tugged at it, revealing a hidden door that I never knew existed. My heart raced as I pulled it open, revealing a narrow, dark passage. "Look at this," I called out, barely containing the mix of excitement and dread that filled me. My friends gathered around, their faces a canvas of curiosity and fear. Together, we stepped into the passage, unaware of the secrets it held, ready to unravel the mystery of the house that once was my home. As we edged through the narrow passageway, the air grew noticeably cooler, and the musty smell of decay gave way to something cleaner, almost sterile. The passage opened into a small, well-lit room that contrasted sharply with the dilapidated state of the rest of the house. It was meticulously organized, the walls lined with shelves filled with files and sophisticated equipment. In the center of the room, a large table was scattered with photographs. I picked one up, my breath catching in my throat as I stared at a photo of myself as a child, playing in the yard of this very house. But among the familiar scenes were photos of people I didn't recognize, posing in what appeared to be other homes, other lives. Their faces seemed strangely familiar, as if I had seen them in passing dreams or forgotten memories. "Alex, look at this," Sarah called out, her voice tense. She was standing by a high-tech setup with multiple monitors displaying live feeds from various houses. It dawned on us then. We weren't just dealing with a forgotten house, but a surveillance center. Tom, who had been rifling through the files on the shelves, held up a document. "These are property records and rental listings, including the fake Airbnb listing for this place." His voice grew grave. "Guys, this isn't just some random squat. This house is the center of a major scam operation." The realization hit us like a cold wave. We were standing in the nerve center of an elaborate network that used abandoned properties to lure unsuspecting guests. The scam was clever, exploiting the trust and excitement of travelers like us, turning places steeped in personal history into traps for profit. We exchanged looks, a mix of fear and resolve knitting our brows. We had unwittingly walked into something much bigger than a simple property scam. We were in a lair where the lines between past and present, between victim and perpetrator, blurred ominously. Crouching behind a stack of old filing cabinets, we heard the heavy tread of boots approaching. The door swung open, admitting two men whose voices were low and urgent. "We need to clear out soon," one man said, a note of impatience in his voice. "Too much heat lately, and with those new guests, it's only a matter of time before we attract unwanted attention." "Yeah, this place has served its purpose. Let's wrap up after this last score," the other replied, flipping through a folder brimming with papers. My heart pounded in my chest as I shared a glance with my friends, their faces etched with anxiety and determination. We couldn't just sneak away. Not now. Taking a deep breath, I stepped from our hiding spot, confronting the two men who spun around, startled. "What are you doing here? How are you part of this?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. Recognition flickered in the eyes of the taller man, who took a hesitant step forward. "Alex, is that you?" he murmured, his tough facade wavering. "Mark?" I gasped, recognizing the friend I had grown up with in this very house. The same friend who disappeared from my life after my family lost the house. "What are you doing? Why are you involved in this?" Mark's face hardened, and he looked away briefly before locking eyes with me again. "After you left, everything fell apart. My family took a hit too, you know. We lost everything. I had to survive. And when I found out about this operation, it was a way to take back some control." The room was thick with tension as my friends quietly called the police, whispering our location into their phones. "Mark, you can't just scam people, you're better than this," I pleaded, my voice thick with emotion. He scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. "You think I wanted this? You got out, Alex, but not all of us did. I'm making do with the cards I was dealt." As we stood there facing each other in the heart of our shared past, the sound of distant sirens began to fill the air, growing louder with each passing second. The confrontation teetered on the edge of violence, the air crackling with tension. Mark's jaw clenched, and his partner shuffled uneasily, glancing toward the exit. Just as Mark took a step closer, the wail of sirens pierced the silence, growing louder as they neared. His resolve crumbling, Mark shot one last conflicted look at me before he and his accomplice bolted, disappearing into the shadows of the house. The police arrived minutes later, flooding the room with light and the stern voices of authority. We recounted everything, leading them through the house and handing over the evidence we had found. The officers were grim but grateful, assuring us that we'd helped uncover a significant criminal operation. Days later, I returned to the house alone. Stepping through the now quiet rooms, I was haunted by the dual shadows of my childhood memories and the recent revelations. The joy I once felt playing in these rooms was now tainted by the knowledge of what had transpired here after we left. As I walked through the empty halls, I struggled to reconcile the home of my memories with the den of deceit it had become, pondering the irreversible ways in which places and people could change. The house, once a symbol of childhood innocence, had mirrored the darker twists of life itself, leaving a lingering question of what other secrets it might still hold. Nestled deep within a secluded forest, Pinecrest Resort stood as a silent witness to both the beauty and isolation of nature. As the owner, I walked through the aged wooden lodge, my steps echoing against the walls that held my family's history. The tall pines around us seemed to whisper secrets of bygone days when the resort thrived with laughter and light. But now, with each bill I set on the cluttered counter, our hope dwindled. Bankruptcy loomed close, threatening to erase the legacy my ancestors had built. I, David, am a man in my early 40s, seasoned by the harsh winters and relentless upkeep of the resort. The lines etched around my eyes might tell a story of stress, but they also speak of resilience. My wife, Maria, always the beacon of optimism in our family, still manages to smile despite the shadows of doubt. Our teenage son, Lucas, grows more like me each day, his young eyes observing and learning the ropes of our family business. Perhaps more than I'd wish for his carefree years. This season brought a full house for the first time in months. a rare and much-needed blessing. Among the guests was Tom, a charismatic leader with a magnetic pull, who booked an extended stay for his group. His presence filled the rooms with an unusual energy, both invigorating and unnerving. As I watched them from my office, Tom's followers seemed enveloped in their own world, their behaviors towing the line between peculiar and disturbing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, their secretive whispers casting a shadow over the temporary relief of a fully booked resort. As the nights drew in at Pinecrest Resort, the once calm atmosphere began to crackle with tension. Guests approached me with complaints of odd noises, whispers floating through the trees and a low drumming sound that disturbed the late hours. Adding to the eeriness, I stumbled upon strange symbols etched into the bark of trees near the cabins, symbols none of us had seen before. These unsettling discoveries sent a chill down my spine, making me question the true purpose of Tom's group. One afternoon, amidst my growing concerns, a guest named Amy sought me out. She had a keen edge about her, observing more than what was on the surface. Initially, her questions seemed casual, queries about the resort's history and operations. But soon, her focus shifted to probing about Tom and his followers. One evening, under the dim lights of the lodge, Amy revealed her true identity to me. She was an undercover officer, investigating Tom's group, which she suspected was a cult planning something sinister. Her suspicions aligned disturbingly well with the odd occurrences around the resort. The weight of her revelation sank heavily on my shoulders. Amy's presence and the implications of her investigation stirred a whirlwind of thoughts. I found myself caught between the duty to protect my guests and the fear of confronting what might be lurking beneath the surface. Each secretive meeting Tom held, every bizarre ritual performed under the moonlight, added layers of doubt and fear. The trust I was supposed to extend to every guest now battled with the instinct to protect my family and the other innocents under my roof. How could I, a simple host, untangle the threads of secrecy and danger? Each night as I lay in bed, the quiet whispers of the forest seemed to echo the turmoil inside me. Was I being paranoid, seeing threats in shadows? Or was my resort truly hosting a dangerous group, poised to strike at any moment? The ambiguity of my situation, coupled with Amy's urgent warnings, built a suspenseful anticipation that something was about to break. My next steps were unclear, but I knew I had to act soon, for the safety of everyone at Pinecrest. As the date of the local harvest festival approached, the resort buzzed with an uneasy energy. Amy and I hatched a plan to gather irrefutable evidence against Tom and his followers during the event, which they seemed particularly excited about. With the influx of visitors expected at the festival, we hoped the cult's activities would be more overt, easier to document. I placed discreet cameras around key areas, my hands trembling. Amy coordinated with local law enforcement, ready to move in at a moment's notice. The festival day dawned clear and bright. The air was festive, but my heart was heavy, sensing the impending storm. As the day progressed, Amy and I watched closely. The cult members mingled with the crowd, their robes hidden under normal festival attire, but their eyes burned with an intense fervor. As the sun set and the main events kicked off, Tom and his group began to retreat subtly towards a secluded part of the resort grounds. Just as Amy and I prepared to follow them, chaos erupted. Tom, having somehow sensed our plans, confronted me directly. His usual charismatic mask had slipped, revealing a cold, menacing figure. In a heart-stopping moment, he revealed his leverage. Maria, my wife, captured and frightened, her arms held by two of his followers. He proposed a trade, my silence for her safety. The standoff was palpable, with the festive music in the background creating a surreal contrast to the danger before me. My mind raced, desperate for a solution. Amy signaled subtly, indicating that the police were minutes away, but each second Maria remained in their grasp was a second too long. In a risky move, I agreed to Tom's terms, hoping to buy time. As he relaxed his guard slightly, I signaled Maria, recalling our old signal from the days we used to play carades with Lucas. Understanding flashed in her eyes, and with a sudden struggle she stepped on the foot of her captor and elbowed him sharply. In the brief commotion, Amy and I acted. I tackled the other captor while Amy rushed to Maria's side, guiding her to safety. The police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached. Tom and his remaining followers attempted to flee, but were quickly rounded up by the arriving officers. As they were handcuffed, Tom turned to me, his eyes seething with a promise of retribution. The immediate threat was over, but the echo of his ominous words lingered in the air, suggesting that this was not the end. In the aftermath of the harrowing rescue, the resort slowly began to exhale the tension it had been holding. Maria, safe but shaken, clung to me as we watched Tom and his followers being led away by the police. The guests, oblivious to the full extent of the night's events, continued to revel in the festival's closing fireworks, their laughter a stark contrast to the darkness we had just endured. As Tom was pushed into the police car, one of his followers caught my eye, a young woman with a hollow stare. She leaned close enough for only me to hear and whispered, "This is but a seed sown. The harvest comes." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, hinting that the cult's reach and plans might extend beyond what we had just stopped. As the police cars disappeared into the night, I realized that our victory might be temporary, and vigilance would be our new normal at Pinecrest Resort. The days following the festival saw Pinecrest Resort return to a semblance of peace. Yet within me, doubt and unease festered like an unhealed wound. Now standing alone on the porch of the main lodge, I watched as the last guests departed, the resort quieting down to an almost eerie stillness. The wind began to pick up, rustling through the pines, carrying with it a whisper that seemed almost intelligible. I strained to listen, the chilling breeze seeming to echo the cult's threat, reminding me that this tranquility might merely be the calm before another storm. What comes next? I pondered this as the sunset bled into the horizon, leaving shadows dancing in the twilight. I've always considered my home more than just a place to live. It's a living museum, a slice of history preserved just as the world outside rushes forward. Nestled in the heart of a sleepy town, my Victorian abode stands as a testament to a bygone era, with its towering gables, intricate woodwork, and the gentle creak of floorboards echoing stories of the past. Over the years, I've dedicated myself to its preservation, each antique and artifact cared for with a reverence only a fellow historian might understand. Today, a new group of guests arrived, their eyes wide with the kind of keen curiosity that usually warms my heart. They seemed especially interested in the local lore, a topic that could fuel hours of discussion. As I led them through the ornate halls, sharing tales of each piece and the era it represented, I noticed their glances exchanged, a silent communication that hinted at something more than mere interest. It was then a small seed of suspicion took root in my mind, shadowing the joy I usually found in such tours. What truly brought them to my door? Was it the love of history, or something far less innocent? As the visitors lingered in my ancestral home, I began to observe disturbing changes. Each morning brought new evidence of their nightly intrusions. A prized painting's frame slightly skewed, the unsettling displacement of first edition books that I knew each precise location of. Even a cherished sculpture appeared as though it had been hastily returned to its pedestal. Their inquiries, too, veered oddly specific, probing into the most arcane details of the home's architecture and the stories of those who had lived there before. Their guise as simple enthusiasts of history was slipping, revealing a sharper, more acquisitive intent beneath. One late evening, troubled by the day's discoveries and their implications, I retreated to my private study, a room untouched by time and visitors, where the true breath of the house's past could still be felt. It was here, behind the facade of a false bottom drawer, that I discovered something extraordinary. A diary, long hidden and forgotten, penned by an ancestor reputed to have eccentricities as vast as his fortune. The diary spoke cryptically of a treasure, ostensibly hidden on the premises as a safeguard against the rampant burglaries of his time. The revelation sparked a cascade of thoughts. Confronting the guests with accusations would likely lead to outright denial and could escalate into legal entanglements for which I had little appetite. Instead, a more cunning approach formed in my mind, inspired by the secretive nature of my ancestor's diary. The following morning, I gathered the guests in the main hall, under the pretense of sharing a rare historical artifact that I had just remembered might interest them. As they assembled, curiosity alight in their eyes, I introduced the diary, open to a page describing the treasure in deliberately vague and alluring terms. "I find myself in need of sharp minds to help unravel these mysteries," I said, watching their faces light up with barely concealed greed. "Should we find this treasure, it would be only fair to share its spoils with those who aided in its discovery." Their agreement was immediate and enthusiastic, binding us in a precarious alliance. As we pored over the diary's cryptic clues, I led them on a carefully orchestrated chase, guiding their energies away from further damaging the house. Unbeknownst to them, the diary was a ruse, a masterful decoy designed to test their true intentions and perhaps teach them a lesson about the value of history over treasure. As our search deepened, so too did the web of deceit I wove, leading them further into the game of shadows I had created. Under the pretense of a shared adventure, guided by the cryptic clues of my great-grandfather's diary, we embarked on a carefully orchestrated treasure hunt. My new allies, buoyed by the thrill of discovery and the lust for unseen riches, followed my lead with eager anticipation. As I directed them page by page through the convoluted instructions, we found ourselves descending into the rarely visited parts of the house. Our destination was the old basement, a place where shadows clung to the corners like cobwebs, and the air held the chill of forgotten things. The basement, with its stone walls and earthy smell, was seldom used, more of a storage for memories than for the detritus of daily life. Here, the diary instructed us to seek a symbol, a mark left by my crafty ancestor as the key to our next clue. As we searched, the light from our lanterns cast eerie shadows, transforming benign objects into specters. The guests murmured among themselves, their excitement palpable, as they speculated about what treasures might lie hidden. Finally, my guided narration and their diligent searching led us to a peculiar section of the brickwork that seemed incongruous with the rest. Newer, less worn. "Here," I said, my voice a blend of feigned discovery and genuine nervousness. "The diary speaks of a door, cleverly concealed to protect what was most precious." With trembling hands, seemingly caught up in the moment, I pressed a loose brick that I knew well, having discovered it myself as a curious child. With a low, grinding sound that seemed too loud in the enclosed space, part of the wall shifted, revealing a narrow passage that led to a small, hidden chamber. The air grew tenser, heavier with dust, and the weight of impending revelation. The group surged forward, their earlier decorum forgotten, driven by the raw edge of greed. As I stepped aside, allowing them to enter the chamber first, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt for the deceit. Yet, it was necessary, I reminded myself, a lesson they needed to learn. Inside the chamber, our lights revealed a small wooden chest, ornately carved but coated with the patina of age, sitting solemnly on a pedestal. The room held its breath as they approached the chest, their dreams of riches reflected in their wide, eager eyes. The lid of the chest creaked open, a sound like a sigh echoing in the tiny chamber. The guests leaned in, their breaths held in suspense, only to find the chest filled with nothing more than a collection of cheap trinkets and baubles. Among the worthless items, a note lay prominently on top, inscribed with a taunting message. "The true treasure of life is integrity, not gold." The atmosphere shifted palpably, the air thick with their disillusionment and rising anger. Their faces turned from shock to fury as they rounded on me, accusations flying. "You've played us for fools," one exclaimed, the betrayal burning bright in his eyes. "All this, a wild goose chase for your amusement?" another accused, her voice a mix of anger and embarrassment. I held up my hands, seeking to calm the storm I had stirred. The treasure, as my great-grandfather intended, was never material, but a test of character, I explained, my voice steady despite their glaring eyes. "You have unveiled not gold, but the greed that blinds." Before their anger could escalate further, I stepped swiftly to the door, sealing it with a firm push. "Consider this moment to reflect on what you truly seek," I called out as I departed, leaving them in the dim light of the chamber. The lock clicked, a temporary measure, yet enough to impart a lasting lesson. As I ascended the basement steps, the weight of my ruse lingered, but so did a hope that their brief confinement would ignite a deeper contemplation on the values long forgotten in the chase for fortune. After some time, I released the group from the chamber. Chastened and subdued, they apologized, a mix of remorse and newfound respect in their voices. As the door closed behind them, I returned to my study, the lessons of the day heavy in my thoughts. True treasure lies not in the wealth we accumulate, but in the history and stories that shape us. I opened another of my ancestors' diaries, its pages brimming with cryptic notes. Smiling, I pondered the new secrets waiting to be explored, leaving the door ajar for future mysteries to unfold.